On behalf of the CJD International Support Alliance, my co-chairman, Suzanne Salvins, and I would like to offer our most sincere thanks to Dr. Neil Cashman and Dr. Kevin Keogh, co-chairman of Prion 2011, and Dr. Michelle Wong, Sandra Haney, Leanne Foster, and the steering committee members for inviting us, the representatives of the patients and families affected by prion diseases, to speak to you. We are extremely grateful for this opportunity. And I would like to add that although Suzanne Salvins doesn't say much more than 18 words during this presentation, she really did the lion's share of the work by putting together the entire slide presentation. She worked for over 2 months to bring the patients and families to you to talk to you today. George Orwell, in his essay In Front of Your Nose, writes, "We are all capable of believing things which we know to be untrue, impudently twisting the facts so as to show that we were right." And to this we respectfully add, often it is only when faced with the inevitable that we admit we had been deceiving ourselves in order to maintain sanity and to keep on going. Statistics predict that worldwide there will be 1 case of CJD per million per head of population every year. In the United States, for example, there are approximately 350 patients diagnosed with a suspected prion disease annually. In addition to these numbers, in France, 120 children have died from CJD as a result of having been treated with contaminated human growth hormone, and 848 more live with the stigma and fear of being at risk. In Japan, 122 husbands, wives, and children have died from CJD acquired through contaminated dura mater transplants. 218 children and young adults have died of variant CJD in the United Kingdom and other countries. And in Australia, 4 women have died and 1,400 women treated for infertility and 700 children treated for short stature were notified that they were at increased risk of developing CJD. In 2006, during the CJD Foundation Family Conference in Washington, D.C., a group of representatives of support organizations from around the world formed what we subsequently named the CJD International Support Alliance. By joining together as an international alliance, we are not only able to help affected families the world over, but also to support each other by speaking out globally on prion disease issues and, during our teleconferences and face-to-face meetings, to share ideas and concerns and discuss the latest research. Current members represent patients and families from Australia, France, Japan, Italy, Israel, the United Kingdom, and the United States, all of whom are your biggest fans. Suzanne, director of the Australian CJD Support Group Network, and I have served as co-chairman since its inception. What would a night in Akron, Ohio, late morning in Australia, sometimes the other way round, be without a flurry of emails flying back and forth across the continents? We know without a doubt through our communications with many hundreds of affected families around the world that while a CJD diagnosis is a decisive death blow to the family, it is also a dramatic, life-altering one for family, friends, and often an entire community of caring strangers. Each of our individual organizations came into existence on the back of what is arguably the most tragic and evil disease on the face of the planet. Through the strength and encouragement we gain from each other, we are better equipped to help those who need us so much. And by being able to fully understand the caller's pain and adjust our conversation to their needs, we can often give them the tools they need to survive another day. Everyone who reaches out to us for help, no matter what language they speak, has a dark wall in front of them. We know we cannot change the outcome, but we can tell them about you and your work. Although the answers aren't clear yet, we can say to them without hesitation that because of the caliber of scientists involved in prion disease research, we are very hopeful. We often hear a change in the callers' voices or in the tone of their emails when they hear about you, and when they discover a whole network of people who care and can provide rational, honest advice and information, offered with the calmness that we are told softens the message. In the broader sense, the world at large knows little about prion diseases, only that they fear them. We often hear CJD referred to as mad cow disease. The terror of these words is electrifying. Many times, the press and the media increase the terror level, either through lack of understanding, the need to write a good story, or both. We, the global advocacy partners, are paying close attention. We look at each occurrence as an opportunity to educate those disseminating such incorrect information, and are merciless in our determination to correct inaccuracies and misconceptions whenever possible. We have, upon occasion, demanded and received corrections, retractions, and/or apologies. In searching for some way to explain the unexplainable, we would like to ask you to take a moment to visualize a beautiful summer day. You and your family have just finished enjoying a picnic lunch and have decided to end the day by walking along an uncharted path. Without any warning, suddenly a fog rolls in, and you realize you are walking along a railroad track with deep cliffs on either side. As you squint through the mist, you hear a rumble and see train lights rushing headlong towards you and your family. You think you can avoid the impact, but after many quick calculations, you realize, with great horror, there is nothing you can do to avoid the inevitable. One minute you are going about your life with purpose and meaning, and suddenly an ominous and unavoidably tragic fate lies in front of you. Your life and that of your beloved families falls apart. As survivors, you eventually find some way to reassemble your broken lives. This is when our individual organizations step in and often do our best work.
Now, through some of our families' own words and photos, we hope this analogy will become crystal clear.
My name is Gary Bogardus, and my wife and I live in a small town about 25 miles south of San Francisco. I met Terry in 1978, and about 4 years later we got married, and over the next dozen years we had 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy. The oldest is now 24 years old and the youngest is 17. Terry was a intelligent, confident woman. She read a lot, and what she would read, she would remember. She could retain what she. It was June of 2009 when I first noticed something abnormal, something about Terry that just wasn't characteristic of her. She was almost 52, and I noticed she was not remembering things like she normally would. And I also noticed that she seemed to be confused quite a bit. But I just thought maybe her age is starting to catch up to her. By August of 2009, it was very apparent that Terry was in trouble. And she was just forgetting so many things. And she was also starting to get very agitated. But the problem we had is she refused to go see a doctor, and it was a very troubling time for us. We had no idea what was going on. And finally, though, about mid-August, we did convince her to go see a neurologist. They performed an MRI on Terry that day, and the next day the neurologist called me back with the diagnosis. And it was just devastating. It was just devastating. I never heard of CJD. Most people I know had never heard of CJD. Here it is almost 2 years later, and amazingly, Terry's still alive. I keep her in a hospital bed upstairs in our bedroom, and I've got hospice involved and family involved and friends involved to help me take care of her. This help has allowed me to work, to continue to work and provide for my children and make sure that they're able to get a good education the way Terry and I have always planned it to be. I have no idea how much longer Terry's going to be with us. The only thing I can do is continue to make sure she's comfortable until she passes. I truly hope to see a cure in my lifetime. This disease is just horrible. It blindsides you. It hits you without warning, and it's just devastating news to the family. Just devastating. And I hope there's a cure someday.
Quando la malattia entra nella vita di una persona, non suona il campanello, non bussa alla porta, non chiede permesso, entra punto e basta. È silenziosa e discreta, ma poi all'improvviso esplode, devasta, distrugge tutto ciò che incontra sulla sua strada. Uno tsunami. Un fenomeno della natura incontrollabile e sicuramente non prevedibile. La mia è una testimonianza reale, vissuta e vista con gli occhi di una figlia, sulla malattia del suo papà e le conseguenze tangibili che hanno investito e segnato me e la mia famiglia. Nessuno mi ha detto né insegnato come dovevo fare a mantenermi ancora in piedi, sulle mie gambe, per poter continuare ad affrontare la vita. La morte scatena una molteplicità di emozioni. Per alcuni è una speranza di sollievo al dolore, per altri un'ingiustizia. Il lutto, come processo di elaborazione del dolore, del dire addio a una persona cara, si cerca di superarlo con l'aiuto di uno psicologo, chi con le proprie forze, chi con un sacerdote, chi condividendo la sofferenza con altre persone e chi ricorre ai farmaci. Io ho deciso di scrivere. E iniziando a provare un'inaspettata sensazione di serenità e arrivando a una conclusione. Carissimi mamma, Alessandro e Donatello, volevo solo dirvi che non dobbiamo assolutamente sentirci sconfitti a causa di questa malattia. Studiandola in tutte le sue sfumature, analizzandola e parlandone con i più bravi dottori, professori e luminari esperti di questo mondo, ho capito che noi, famiglia, non abbiamo sbagliato nulla e nemmeno loro. Tutto è stato fatto nel migliore dei modi e nei tempi giusti. Nessun rimpianto. È stato fatto davvero tutto per papà. Alleggerite i vostri cuori da pesanti macigni di dubbio. La rabbia e il dispiacere non svaniscono nel nulla, lo so, non è giusto. Ancora adesso ci chiediamo il perché. Perché proprio a noi? Perché proprio papà? Perché proprio adesso? Proviamo invece a soffermare la nostra attenzione su chi era nostro padre e che cosa ci ha lasciato di bello. Il suo sorriso, i suoi occhi, i suoi insegnamenti, le sue regole, la sua generosità, il suo humor, il suo forte senso di giustizia, la sua dolcezza, il suo cuore tenero, sono tutte caratteristiche che abbiamo acquisito in eredità inconsapevolmente. Voglio pensare che sia stato papà a guidarmi e accompagnarmi, suggerendomi le parole giuste e utilizzandomi come suo tramite per esprimere quello che ancora non era stato detto. Siate sereni, vi voglio bene.
My name is Amy. I have 4 children and my dad passed away from CJD last year. I was very close to my dad. He was an active member of my family and he loved his 4 grandchildren dearly. He was a healthy 67-year-old man who enjoyed an active lifestyle. It has been devastating to me and my children to watch him suffer through CJD and finally die. It all started in February last year when my dad, out of the blue, started to show signs of memory loss and confusion. Initially, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and as a result I moved him into my home so that I could provide him with 24-hour care. Within about 8 weeks, my dad's condition had started to rapidly decline. He had no short-term memory, he was very confused with objects, he became incontinent, he had a widened gait as well as problems with his balance and coordination. He was completely unable to look after himself and he required 24-hour supervision. At this point he was admitted to hospital for further tests because the doctors simply did not know what was wrong. It was an emotional roller coaster for me attending the hospital because every day that I went I saw that his condition had deteriorated. I was at times extremely frustrated with the nursing staff and doctors because I wanted to know what was wrong, and of course I clinged to the hope that they would be able to cure him. It was not long before I faced that moment when my dad no longer recognised me. I thought this was hard to deal with, but then came his complete loss of mobility. He was bedridden, incontinent, suffered jerks and tremors, and was completely unable to speak or communicate. It was at this point that doctors mentioned the possibility of CJD, and I asked for blood to be taken so that familial CJD could be ruled out. My dad had lost his swallow reflex, and he was unable to eat or drink. The hospital asked me to consent to a feeding tube being inserted. After seeking advice from palliative care experts, I said no. The hospital decided to override me anyway. 5 days before my dad died, the hospital insisted that I move my dad to a nursing home. So I organised for my dad to be moved to a nursing home. At the nursing home, I then became embroiled in another conflict, this time with my dad's family. They wanted the feeding tube to be put back in, and after advice from the nursing home doctor, I did not. The last days of my dad's life were marked with high levels of family conflict. After my dad passed away, I realised that not only did I lose my dad that day, but my relationships with members of his family were severely damaged. At the time, I was relieved that my dad's battle with CJD was over. Or from the doctor at the hospital, he said, "I have your dad's familial CJD test results. I'm not sure, but I think your dad has the gene for familial CJD." I started to feel extremely stressed, and I shook as I said, "What do you mean? What do you think? What does the report say?" The doctor replied that the medical jargon was so hard to read and understand, and that he didn't understand it, so why didn't I come and get a copy of the report and take it to a geneticist who would be better placed to explain it to me? After attending the counselling, I decided to have the test. My main concern was my children, and I thought that if I didn't have the gene, then I could relieve my anxiety about having passed it on to them. I recently got my results back. It turns out, unfortunately, that I also have the gene. So for now, I am learning to live with the knowledge that I have a gene for familial CJD. Sometimes, I have to admit, it is very hard to find worth in my life. I often worry about the fact that at least one, if not more, of my children will also have the gene, and I worry about how this will impact on their lives. My journey has been very difficult, but the hope that I cling to is that someone will find a treatment or a way of preventing the progression of this degenerative disease.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Rémi Collin, j'ai 40 ans, je suis originaire du nord-est de la France, région du Champagne. Avec mes 5 frères et sœurs, de 76 à 87, nous avons reçu un traitement d'hormones de croissance extractive d'origine humaine, produit par l'Institut Pasteur, parce que nous étions de petite taille. En 92, le soir du réveillon de Noël, nous avons appris par les médias français que des personnes étaient décédées de la MCJ. Après avoir reçu les lots d'hormones extractives, et tout de suite, nous avons compris les risques de déclarer cette terrible maladie. Après avoir fait des recherches, je me suis rapproché de l'association APEV-MCJ en 96 afin d'en savoir plus sur ces risques. Au fil des années, le décompte des victimes a pris une ampleur désastreuse en France, avec 120 victimes à ce jour. Triste record hélas avec 70% de décès sur le plan mondial. Au bout de 20 ans, je connais beaucoup de familles qui ont perdu un proche et je peux vous assurer que c'est inhumain de vivre ça. À ce jour, je n'ai pas déclaré cette maladie, et mes frères et sœurs aussi. Mais nous avons un immense espoir qu'un remède soit trouvé pour éradiquer cette maladie.
Et voilà, je vais un peu parler de ma fille, qui donc a été traitée pendant les 2 années principales à risque, dites à risque, 83-85. Aujourd'hui, Dieu merci, elle n'a pas développé la maladie. Maintenant, elle connaît le risque. Depuis seulement le premier procès, c'est-à-dire en 2008, je lui avais caché jusqu'alors. Elle a réagi avec un certain courage, mais l'angoisse, elle la connaît depuis déjà longtemps, dans la mesure où mon secret a perturbé mes comportements, à vrai dire. Et donc, l'environnement de ma fille a été quand même difficile à soutenir quelque part dans la mesure où j'étais dans une angoisse depuis de longues années et que cela avait quand même bien altéré ma joie de vivre. Elle prend avec courage son destin. Elle a créé une compagnie artistique vouée au théâtre, au mime, à la marionnette. Elle est souvent angoissée et elle m'appelle pour me parler, pour quelque part un peu calmer ses inquiétudes. Donc je reçois son discours en essayant intervenir le moins possible et surtout lui proposer et lui accueillir, enfin l'accueillir, être dans l'écoute. Voilà. Alors au jour d'aujourd'hui, elle a quand même bientôt la quarantaine et elle n'a pas réussi à fonder un foyer dans la mesure où à chaque fois qu'elle commence une liaison, celle-ci ne dure pas dans la mesure où très souvent le partenaire la quitte sans raison. Donc je me suis demandé si le fait d'être quittée comme ça brutalement à plusieurs reprises, ce qui d'ailleurs la met dans des états bien évidemment de dépression, si ce n'est pas parce qu'elle dit lorsqu'elle rencontre quelqu'un qu'elle raconte qu'elle a été effectivement qu'elle a subi un traitement dans sa jeunesse et peut-être que cela fait peur à ses compagnons, enfin à ses compagnons potentiels. C'est vrai que jusqu'alors elle n'avait pas la notion de la dangerosité puisque elle n'a su qu'en 2008 qu'elle était effectivement tout à fait concernée par le risque. Et peut-être que maintenant qu'elle sait, va-t-elle comprendre d'elle-même qu'il ne faut pas qu'elle parle de cet événement dans sa vie pour ne pas perdre les chances de créer une véritable relation. Surtout qu'elle est très demandeuse, elle voudrait vraiment pouvoir mettre au monde un enfant, donc elle s'angoisse du fait que le temps passe et qu'elle n'y arrive pas. Là, en gros, les problèmes qu'elle connaît actuellement, avec évidemment la peur de développer la maladie, cette peur que nous partageons elle et moi. Je peux pas dire trop non plus d'autres choses. En général, pour parler en général, eh bien, c'est un combat permanent contre la peur que doivent mener ces jeunes qui sont à risque. Je remercie, je suis très touchée du fait de savoir que nous ne sommes pas abandonnés, qu'il y a des personnes, des chercheurs qui sont guidés par la conscience et qui...
We would like to offer our gratitude to the families who so willingly provided their personal stories. We would like to end by telling you that very often, when our families are unable to find the words to express their gratitude, they simply say to us what we would like to say to you. Thank you for being there.